What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 34 of the VT Roundtable. I'm Brett Anderson. I'm joined by my usual guys who are ecstatic to be fans of this 10-2 Minnesota Vikings team right now. We got BJ in the bottom left-hand corner. Freshly shaven, man. He decided to ditch the beard. Little bummed about it. Well, not really a beard, right? Mustache, my bad.
Mustache.
But same thing. And then we got Drew over in the bottom right-hand corner and Sean Borman up top. Make sure you follow those guys on YouTube. Twitter. Their handles are right below their pictures. So anyway, Vikings travel to Atlanta. We get to go in that awesome new stadium and manage a 14-9 win in a pretty sloppy game. Case had another pretty solid performance, 227 yards and 2 touchdowns, no picks. Xavier Rhodes and Mike Zimmer's defense shut down Julio Jones, holding him to just 2 receptions for 24 yards. BJ and I were just talking about that's
actually
kind of debatable.
I want to hold up. I want to preface. I want to get this out of the way right now because I have so many people blowing up my Twitter right now trying to correct me, and you guys are wrong. Watch the football game, okay? He had 3 targets. The one target that you guys are saying that got him over to 24 yards, that was very, very, very clearly not his coverage. Sarkisian moved him into the slot when Rhodes was already on the outside late in the play. 3 targets, 1 reception, 13 yards. Rhodes closed. Period. That's it. You guys can talk now if you want.
I mean, Brett's on mute.
No.
My bad. See, BJ, look what you did, man. You derailed my whole intro. Thanks for that. Appreciate it.
I'm sorry.
That was a good intro, though.
But at the end of the day, Vikings won their 8th straight. Seriously starting to look like contenders now. So let's jump right in. This is a live show, so feel free to leave your comments and questions in the chat. Hopefully we don't encounter any technical difficulties this week. And it remains a live show for its entirety. Towards the end of the show, we may bring some people on, so we'll drop that link in the chat towards the end. But let's just start off with kind of your guys' instant reactions to today's game. Just get some of your thoughts right off the bat. Let's go with Drew. What do you think, man?
What do I think? Let's see.
I'm also kind of letting you guys talk for a sec while I make sure that we're actually live right now because I just want to make sure everything's working. So
I mean, the chat's working. I'm in the chat on YouTube, and I need to shout out to Anthony right now in the chat because I said "What's up" in the chat, and then Anthony goes, "Get out of the chat, Drew. Let BJ run it." So
that's kind of
shout out to Anthony.
That's kind of rude.
Shout out to Anthony.
That's pretty funny.
But I mean, I don't know. I thought I want to say this was
going on right now.
It just seemed. Whoa.
Hey, Drew,
what's going on right now?
Yeah, Drew, I don't know. You're kind of pausing or something.
We got some Wi-Fi problems right now.
No, I think I'm good. I think we're good.
You guys all look confused.
You might need to leave and come back.
Okay.
Leave and come back. BJ, you seem to look okay. Why don't you go ahead and then we'll get Drew's opinion when he gets back in here.
Okay, so I mean, from a defensive perspective, I primarily was watching Xavier Rhodes the entire time, so I'm gonna have to go back and watch the game again before I have anything else. But from my vantage point, Xavier Rhodes just had the finest game of his entire career. Press coverage across the board, following Julio basically until Sarkisian forced him not to with audibles and whatnot. I thought he did an absolutely fantastic job across the board. He got some help in coverage. I thought that Andrew Sendejo, I noticed him coming up a couple times and playing well as the safety. Harrison Smith, of course, did his thing. Again, I have to double check this, but I don't think he had any targets in this game. So overall, I was very impressed with how the secondary played against, what people like to say is a stacked receiving corps. That was all nice. And from an offensive perspective, you have to, at this point, you have to respect the grit of Case Keenum. He didn't have a good first half. It seemed like he was a little bit erratic with his accuracy and whatnot. The same types of critiques we've been giving him all season long. He responded in the second half in a big way, executed everything that Pat Shurmur was bringing out for him, who had another perfect game, by the way. Pat Shurmur is unreal at play calling right now, particularly on the goal line. He's getting the job done on the goal line. That's what counts to me.
We'll agree there.
So,
yes, for sure. We can talk about that.
as a whole, I really appreciate, how the defense played today, specifically Rhodes in that secondary, and the offense. Can't say enough about the job that Case Keenum did and the job that Kyle Rudolph did to get this team kind of off the ground in the second half.
Yeah. All right, Sean. What about you, man? And then we'll get back to Drew.
Yeah, like BJ said, Keenum did not play well in the first half. The offense, I thought, kind of struggled throughout the entire first half. But this was kind of the battle of the third down teams. Atlanta being first in the league,
really?
Third down conversions. Yeah, and the Vikings being
the
second.
Broadcasting crew. I think they only mentioned that a couple times throughout the game today. Like every third down.
Attention to that. But the fact that the Vikings defense held Atlanta to 1 of 10 third downs, I thought was huge.
Yeah.
I thought that was the difference maker right there. So I was impressed, like BJ said, with Keenum's grit towards the end to come back and throw 13 of 13 passes in the second half, 15 in a row, was just unbelievable.
What did he have? What do you have? 5 incompletions on the day today, and 2 of them were those perfectly placed balls down the sideline to Thielen and Diggs, right? Yeah. So basically, you can say that he was accurate on 20 of his 23 passes today, which is exceptional. I don't care if these cornerbacks that he's playing against are, little leaguers. They're still in the professionals. They're still professional football players. They come out. They they did their job. They actually played very well in my opinion.
They played really well today.
I would agree.
But the point being here is that, I don't care. These guys are professionals no matter what. And to beat them the way he did with his accuracy today, you can't take that away from Case Keenum.
Yeah.
And again, showing pretty good pocket presence.
Absolutely.
He didn't look great in the first half, but it got better throughout the game.
All right, so let's start off there, I guess, like we normally do. We won't make it a long conversation. But in regards to Case Keenum, I guess the question I'd ask is, at this point, he's the starter moving forward, right? I mean, can either of you anticipate a scenario where, outside of injury, he gets yanked at this point?
No, not. That would be such a huge mistake.
What? Yeah.
Even if Teddy Bridgewater is actually the better quarterback, which I to some degree believe he might be, at this point, it's just like Case Keenum is doing well enough. You don't need better. Like, he's doing everything you're asking for. And don't try to take away that momentum. 8 straight wins. I mean, the dude's got a chip on his shoulder. He kind of embodies the mentality of, the underdog mentality of Minnesota. He's our guy. This is the guy we want in there. This is my quarterback. I don't care anymore. He's the quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings.
And BJ, and maybe I'm just misinterpreting your phrasing there, but the way you said it is almost like, he's getting the job done. He's doing what we're asking him to do.
Right.
What would you say? I mean, because I'm almost starting to think like at this point, he's almost carrying the offense at times. You know what I mean? Like, and I think it's like Sean said, I think a lot of that is because of his pocket presence, because he has been showing a phenomenal ability to move around and make space for himself in the pocket. He had, he took 2 sacks today, which was kind of disappointing to see the offense. But I mean, really, all things considered, 2 sacks really isn't that bad. I think we've just gotten used to an elite offensive line this season, which is insane.
I was going to say that's what I was going to say off of your point, is that the offensive line is probably still the MVP right now. I know it's unfair to say that 5 people are the MVP of a team, but it's I think that Case Keenum is still to a degree a product of the system. That's not I don't think that's a negative. I just think that he's that should tell you a lot about him, honestly, that he's a product of the system, because he came in, he learned the system in basically under a year. He's executing it to perfection. He's doing play action as well as anyone. I mean, he embodies the West Coast tools right now. He's literally the perfect quarterback for what Pat Shurmur is trying to do. And just because he's, benefiting from all these things around him, this is something I had to personally come around on, is that doesn't necessarily matter. I mean, the guys aren't going anywhere. If they're not leaving, who cares if he's benefiting from him? He's playing good quarterback with these guys. So, I mean, if Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen leave somehow in the next 24 hours, then we might get to see if he's, Case Keenum's not good. But bold prediction, I don't see that happening. So
are you guys – sorry, go ahead, Sean.
No, I was going to say, we saw what a cohesive offensive line could do in the first half. I mean, did you see how much time he had to throw those balls?
Yeah, and a lot of that too was
from a Vikings offensive line in years.
A lot of that was due to his movement too. I mean, he kind of rolled out of the pocket, and he would kind of step forward and make it look like he was going to maybe take it, but then he kind of hops back a little bit, and I mean, I don't know. He was really kind of, a magician out there with his footwork today. At sometimes it looked like. So I guess my question to follow that up is, at this point, is Case Keenum capable of winning a Super Bowl or let's just say a long playoff run at this point? I mean, because we had talked. I mean, that was what we had talked about before, right? If you think Case Keenum is the quarterback to win you a Super Bowl, leave him in. If you don't, then maybe you got to look at something else. But at this point, I'm assuming that everyone thinks that Case Keenum can be the guy to win this team a Super Bowl. Drew, can you talk now?
Well, we'll try this out, and if it sounds really bad, go ahead and kick me, and I will just go do homework or something. But I think we're getting our answer right now with Case Keenum. I mean, he went on the road, since the bye week, on the road against a tough Washington team, tough place to play, win. Come back home against at US Bank Stadium against the Rams, high quality team, pretty dominant win there. Then you get Thanksgiving at Detroit, tough divisional matchup, get the win. Then you get a Atlanta team that's has just played in a Super Bowl and they should have won really. And I still think they are a team as far as both sides of the ball when they're healthy. I think this defense is really good, and Case Keenum got the win today as well with a terrific second half. So I think my answer here is yes. I think Case Keenum can lead the Vikings to a Super Bowl. And I think that question is getting answered with these last 4 weeks here since the bye week. I think he's been phenomenal. And I think we're getting to that point now where the Vikings are very much as valuable as the defense to this Vikings team right now.
Yeah. I mean, this is the stretch, right? That we said we were gonna learn whether or not this team was a contender. I mean, those 4 games you just rattled off, those were all very tough games. The Redskins aren't slouches. I think they're better than their record shows. And, the Detroit Lions are a good team, especially, at home. So I think at this point you've seen that they can compete with the best teams in this league and beat them. So I think probably their last, true test is at Carolina. And that'll kind of end this away stretch. And I honestly, I'm less concerned about that game than I was about the Atlanta game and the Rams game. That's just my personal opinion about that game. And we'll probably talk about the Carolina game a little bit more later. But all right, does anyone have anything else to add on Case Keenum before we move on to another topic? All right, Case Keenum's the guy. All right, so let's talk about Xavier Rhodes because, I think everyone identified that as the key matchup in this game. Julio Jones last week, 11 receptions, 250 plus yards, 2 touchdowns, went off on the Buccaneers. So we spent a lot of time this week talking about Julio Jones' past performances against Xavier Rhodes and how they were going to match up this week. Like we said in the intro, he was held to 1 reception, BJ, on Xavier Rhodes. His total stat line was 2 receptions for 24 yards. But so you kind of said during the game, BJ, Xavier Rhodes is the best cornerback in the NFL.
That's correct. That's exactly what I think.
Go ahead and tell people why.
I could absolutely do that. So Drew and I have been talking, kind of wavering on where to fit in Xavier Rhodes with the rest of the quarterbacks for probably about 2 years. And last year, I thought he was probably like a top 10-ish player if you're being objective about it. Last year, towards as he got into the middle of the season when he started really dominating guys like Odell Beckham and DeAndre Hopkins, started getting him into top 5 conversation. And then this year, over the last, he's been reinforcing that, his great 2016 season all year long with the performances against Mike Evans, Julio Jones, Antonio Brown. I mean, he's beating all of the, quote, best wide receivers in the league. I think a lot of people would argue that those 3 guys that I just named are, in fact, the best 3 receivers in the league, and he's held those 3 guys combined to, I believe, under 75 yards. So I don't know what more you can ask from your cornerback than to literally watch him travel the field with a gazelle and Julio Jones and stop him from even receiving targets for the most part. And then for me, what broke the camel's back on why he's the number 1 cornerback, Steve Sarkisian, the offensive coordinator for the Atlanta Falcons, was literally afraid to throw at Julio Jones. It wasn't like he was, not targeting Julio because he still want. Let me try this again. He wanted to target Julio Jones very clearly, And so he tried to, manipulate the field with different types of audibles and stuff like that because he saw Rhodes would line up in the outside to start, so he'd move him inside. Basically, he was forcing pick plays and stuff like that to the outside to get Julio free because he didn't trust arguably the best receiver in the NFL to get off the line of scrimmage well against Xavier Rhodes. Well, that was when it was over for me. That's why he's number one corner in the league.
And he even had that. I don't know if this was by design. The broadcast crew was kind of talking about it, but he had that play where Jones came out of the huddle late, and the broadcast crew identified that. Do you guys think that was on purpose to get the matchup they wanted?
Oh yeah,
for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Why else would he? Right? I mean, maybe that wasn't the ultimate goal, but they were definitely trying to do something to get Julio Jones away from Xavier Rhodes. Watching the game, it's tough from in a real-time perspective, but it certainly seemed like Steve Sarkisian was doing everything possible in that second half to stay away from Rhodes because he received 0 targets when he was covering Julio Jones during that second half.
Go ahead, Sean.
BJ, do you think that was more of the offensive scheme or more Matt Ryan not wanting to look that way?
I said that's tough, but it's tough to judge Matt Ryan. I think he's a very intelligent quarterback, and I generally think that the way that he plays the game is that he starts to kind of overload targets to guys that are getting open consistently. That's why I don't like Mohamed Sanu in this offense because he's such an inconsistent player. So when you started seeing Matt Ryan not target Julio Jones, I think that was literally him kind of identifying the situation and being like, all right, these guys are canceling each other out. I got to look elsewhere. So to a degree, I think it was schemed. I think that it was intentionally schemed, but then to kind of add evidence to that, we didn't see Matt Ryan even target him, look his direction unless he knew for a fact that Rhodes wasn't going to be on him. So I think it's kind of a combination of both things. Matt Ryan's generally a very safe thrower, so that's kind of the way I see it, I guess.
Drew, you have anything to add about Xavier Rhodes and Julio Jones?
Yeah, I think the Rhodes versus Julio matchup. It didn't seem obviously Julio didn't get the targets that we kind of wanted to see just because it would have been fun to watch that matchup. But I thought Rhodes in some cases didn't kind of look like himself in this game. I think Mohamed Sanu got beat him a couple times. I thought I think the fear factor of trying so hard to scheme Julio away from Xavier Rhodes almost got into Steve Sarkisian's head a little bit. And I think when you can do that as a cornerback, even on your off days, you can still have that kind of effect on an offense that you might not be at the top of your game, but simply the who you are, your presence on the field itself can change the game. And I think that's what happened with Xavier Rhodes today, more so than his actual performance, because even that first play of the game, Julio drilled Xavier off the line, and that should have been probably a 25, 30-yard gain on that slant. And that maybe would have set a completely different tone for this game. But I think simply Rhodes is kind of the aura he has now and the reputation he has now as a shutdown guy is kind of what is destroying offensive game plans, more so at sometimes than actual, what he's actually showing on the field.
So is he the best cornerback in the NFL?
Sure, I'll say that. I'll say he is. Yeah, I don't know.
So do you guys think the entire secondary? I mean, I guess let's expand this to a conversation about the entire secondary today, because there were times that Rhodes wasn't lined up on Jones, right? And you had other people lined up on Jones. So how do you guys think the entire secondary performed today? Because I think you probably should give some of those other guys credit today in shutting down Jones as well. I think Mackenzie Alexander maybe. Would you say he had one of his best games of the season today? I think he had a few kind of crucial plays. And he also got called for that defensive pass interference, which I thought was really kind of ticky-tacky, but I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was pretty good coverage. But so what do you guys think about the secondary as a whole today? Because I guess there were times during the game today where I was like, man, the secondary is really reeling right now. They're really struggling. But then you go back and look at the box score and the stats, and it really doesn't show up that much. I mean, looking at Atlanta's passing yards, they only had 173 yards through the air. And you look at individual breakdown of who got those yards. Sanu was their leading receiver with 43 yards today. So I mean, I kind of feel like,
of course he was. Of course he was.
I kind of feel like the secondary was struggling, but then it's almost like the stats don't represent that. What do you guys think?
Mac Alexander was really good again today. He's, I don't know. I would have to run the numbers again after this performance from Rhodes, but I believe he still has the lowest passer rating allowed among Vikings cornerbacks. So he was extremely impressive once again. And Trey Waynes, I mean, how many times did you see him get beat? I believe it was one time that he genuinely was beat on a play. So I thought he was impressive as well. So across the board, that press coverage that Mike Zimmer loves to run, it seemed to really work once you were able to neutralize Julio Jones. So like I said, Mohamed Sanu does not get off the line well from a general perspective. I think that catch that he had on Rhodes was off coverage. I can't remember 100% on there. You look at the way that these guys played when they were able to get their hands on receivers in the initial 5 yards of the play. I thought they all played extremely well, basically across the board. I didn't notice Newman all that much. I'd have to check his snap counts, but I thought that those three guys, Rhodes, Waynes, and Alexander, did a tremendous job neutralizing Julio, Mohamed Sanu, and Taylor Gabriel.
So did Sean and Drew, did either of you feel like the secondary struggled at times today? Did you get that same vibe too, or am I alone in that?
I did not. I don't know how you feel, Drew, but I thought it's the best secondary in the NFL, in my opinion. You guys saw it in action today. And like BJ was saying, Mackenzie Alexander, what a game. I mean, he's growing into, what will obviously become a bigger role. And like that pass breakup he had in the flats on third down, that was incredible, I thought. So I think I'm excited for his future. And everybody, including Terrence Newman, they know their assignments. They know where to be. This isn't a secondary that's going to give up a lot of big plays, and that's huge. Even Sadejo stepped up.
So where do you think the weak point on was it maybe just the linebackers then today? Because maybe it was just because I feel like the linebackers were kind of getting exposed early in the game a little bit. I'm not sure if Kendricks is still dealing with an injury, but they seem to exploit him early on. Or am I just completely off on this and the defense was phenomenal today and I don't know what I'm talking about?
I think the Falcons put together 3 really good drives that kind of distorted how we felt about it, because their field goal tries, and I guess also the missed field goal. If that's kind of that bend but don't break type of thing the Vikings had for 4 of those drives, maybe if you count the missed field goal. So there were a few times where the Falcons did move the ball down the field, but then outside of those drives, there was nothing. Falcons had nothing going for them. I'll have to look at the first down numbers, but I can't imagine that they had very many at all. So I think, sure, yeah, 15. If you got them. 15 for them the entire game?
15 the entire game, yeah.
So now I want to know how many of those were on their 3
scoring drives. And I don't know if you were here when we were talking about it, but they were 1 in 10 on third downs. The number one third down team, as you guys heard. They were
1 on third down.
1 for 10 on third down today.
Ooh.
I mean,
because the Vikings are the top.
And I remember
top defense.
Third down defense.
You guys remember that third down play that it got him to? You remember this one? It was the one where Eric Kendricks probably should have leaked out into the flat, and he got, I think it was Tevin Coleman wide open.
Yeah.
That was the one time they converted on third down, and it was a play that the Vikings completely blew.
I cannot believe it. They only got 1 third down. That's unbelievable to me.
Yeah. You can make an argument that literally the Vikings didn't lose. Like, the only time they lost was when they beat themselves today.
I believe the Vikings were second in the league on offense on third down efficiency. They were number 1 on defense. I imagine they'll probably move up today, potentially to number 1 after Atlanta's performance. So that's pretty interesting. If you have the number 1 third down team on defense and the number 1 third down team on offense, that's a pretty good package deal.
Yeah,
now, I was just looking. Go ahead, Sean.
Oh, the Vikings are 6 of 12, I believe, on third down.
Yeah. And I was actually just looking at the scores. I was looking at Atlanta's previous games and their scores. I don't have the actual numbers. I'm kind of just going off the final scores here. But I believe the Vikings are the only team this season to hold the Falcons to no touchdowns, just by looking at these scores. And they've also held them to less points than any other team this year. So, and this is a pretty high-powered offense. To keep the Falcons from getting in the end zone once, I think is a pretty huge accomplishment. So maybe I should just shut up and bow down to this defense, because they had a pretty phenomenal performance today.
In Atlanta's home stadium too.
Yeah.
I was going to say, Brett, that generally speaking, I respect the question itself because you always try to find who was exploited or who is the weakest link. But 173 yards should kind of be like a baseline for a passing offense. Like they should never, for a team like the Falcons who pass the ball very well, they should never be lower than 175 yards. So in my opinion, you can look at this game as a very complete football game from top to bottom. I know the sack numbers weren't way up. I know that the interceptions weren't way up, but from just a ground, like from a stop the other team perspective, I don't think there was a weakest link today.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so moving over to unless you guys want to talk about the defense anymore, let's move over to the offense. I thought it was pretty interesting today how the Vikings wide receivers were pretty much shut down for a large portion of the game by this secondary that headed into the game you thought was going to be a weakness because they were missing two key players. And I know, I mean, a lot of this will come once, I'm sure you guys will go and look at the tape and break it down a little more and see exactly what happened. But from what you guys saw, were the receivers struggling against the secondary? And do you have any? Do you maybe know why, or any guesses to why that may be? Drew, I always feel so weird like pitching it to one. I never know which one of you guys wants to talk about it first. So don't be afraid to just dive in. Are you still having technical difficulties, Drew?
Well, you're cutting out a little bit, Brett. So I'm kind of guessing if I'm supposed to talk right now, and if I'm not. So
yes,
go for it.
It sounds like very robotic. It sounds very robotic. So,
okay.
by the way, I think the Falcons really tried to take away Thielen and Diggs and make other guys beat them, and it to some extent that's what they did. But the Vikings were able to. The Vikings defense essentially played better and did that better on their side of the ball than the Falcons did. Because I thought, that's kind of what I was somewhat concerned about with Keenum in the first half was that, the Vikings, for whatever reason, either A, the first read wasn't open, or B, Case Keenum wasn't pulling the trigger on the first read if it was open. One of those things was happening because, there was a lot of time to throw. And for whatever reason, Keenum was pulling the trigger. So I think that kind of messed up the flow of the game early for the Vikings offense. But they, in the second half, there was more of a flow. I thought Pat Shurmur made things a lot easier for Keenum, a lot more rollouts, kind of quicker, tempo of play, and the running helped too. But I think that's once those receivers are we now know that once those receivers are bottled up, the Vikings can still win games. Still move the ball down the field, which kind of was a little bit of a worry for me coming into this game.
Yeah, I think they kind of pivoted to Rudolph, wouldn't you say? I mean, I feel like
the
offense kind of pivoted to Rudolph and relied on him to get a lot of those first downs. I'm not sure how many he got, but I feel like they kind of went to him when they really needed one. They ran that rollout, play action rollout.
You see him break a couple tackles on that hitch route over the middle.
Man. Yeah, he had a big game.
So
today.
Fast. So fast.
What are his touchdowns on the year? Does anyone know off the top of their head?
6
touchdowns on the year. What's his? I wonder what his best is as a Viking. Probably like 8 to 10, right?
I think it's 12. Did he have 12 back in 2000 or it's 9? Maybe 9.
Like 10 or 11, something like that.
In like 2012, 10. I think when he was a Pro Bowler.
2012 was that was kind of his. He was a Pro Bowl MVP that year, by the way.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Pro Bowl MVP.
I think, and we'll talk about it later, but I think he maybe deserves to be mentioned in the Player of the Game segment.
Absolutely.
Later, potentially. So what do you think, BJ, about the receivers? You think it's just kind of a fluky thing, or
I think to some degree it's fluky, because I think that when the Vikings when they needed to have receptions, they were able to get them during the second half. You saw, I think Adam Thielen had 3 of his 4 receptions during the second half when they were like in critical time. So to me, that says it all. When they needed to get open, they were able to. But I do think that these cornerbacks stepped up in a big way for the Falcons. I did not expect Robert Alford is a solid player. I didn't think that he'd be able to contain these guys as well as he did. I don't know if DeMonte Casey was out there a whole lot. I didn't necessarily notice 27 a whole lot, but I know that I do remember him being a very interesting prospect coming out of San Diego State. So if he was out there doing his thing, that doesn't really shock me because I thought that he would look like a good corner, like a good nickel corner in the NFL. But Robert Alford, I mean, you got to give props to that dude. I mean, he stepped up in a monstrous way for his fallen comrades, I suppose. So I think it's kind of a tip of the cap situation to the Falcons for shutting down the Vikings receivers during the first half. But when Thielen and Diggs needed to do their thing, they were able to do their thing.
Yeah, I think we had, looking at the numbers, we had 207 yards through the air. So just a little bit more than the Falcons today. That's probably a little bit below our average too, I would guess, on the season. So Sean, what about you? I wanted to ask you, Sean, about the offensive line. What did you think about the offensive line performance today? Do you attribute much of the pressure on Keenum to that, or maybe just they're going up against a good Falcons front four, or what?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Falcons' pass rush is pretty good. I mean, they've got quite a few guys with 4 more sacks. And I thought Ben Lieber brought up a good point, too. In the first half, he saw a lot of straight back drops from Keenum. And in the second half, he saw a little more movement, a couple rollouts. So I thought that was crucial to, his success, really. As far as the offensive line, it sucks seeing Reif give up his first sack of the year. But all in all, I thought they did pretty good. I mean, our offense is so balanced right now that I love it. I love seeing the runs, the very effective runs, and the effective passing game as well. So all in all, I thought the offensive line had a pretty good day, despite the sacks.
It's really kind of telling, I think, how far the offensive line's come that we even mentioned it as a potentially bad game, only giving up 2 sacks, And I think it's just relative to their performance. I mean, I think last season, if you would have said the Vikings offensive line gave up 2 sacks, you'd say hallelujah and and ask for that every week. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Did you Drew or BJ see anything today that's concerning along the offensive line, or?
Oh no, I just saw a bunch of really good pass rushers get home a couple times. To be honest.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Drew.
Yeah, I mean, I think people got concerned a little bit about Riley Reif, but I don't think there's anything to worry about there because we couldn't expect Reif to literally not allow any sacks all season long, so that was kind of one of those where it's bound to happen. And again, like Sean mentioned, Atlanta's pass rush is really, really good, and they have a bunch of athletic freaks up there, and obviously Dan Quinn does a really good job of mixing things up. So, I'm not concerned about it moving forward. And, it's not, and again, Case Keenum was moving around really well today. It seemed like at times, like, on Madden, when you're playing, you roll out way to the right or the left, and you just kind of stand there because your linemen are blocking, like auto blocking on Madden. That's what Case Keenum did a few times today. I thought it was kind of funny that's like how I would control him on Madden. I would just move all the way to the outside instead of stepping up into the pocket like you're supposed to do. Just roll all the way outside.
You're one of those guys that rolls out on every single snap on Madden.
Yeah, or you get the guy that 14-step drop back, and you just go back. Yeah.
You're like you sub in Russell Wilson, use the Seahawks sub in Russell Wilson, and just roll out every play.
Yeah, or like Michael Vick in 2004.
Yeah,
you just run around in circles for like 2 minutes.
I'm trying to remember which quarterback, because there was one quarterback who was like a 73. It might have been Michael Vick before he got good in Philadelphia, but like in 2009 Madden or something like that, he was like a 73 overall, but his speed was like a 95. So like, I totally feel you on this, Drew, that like you could literally just roll him out of the pocket, and if you could reset his feet, the accuracy was good. Otherwise, he had the field. Like, it was the easiest way to win cheap if you did fantasy drafts on your franchise mode.
It's so frustrating playing Madden because you play people like Drew, who abuse the game and just make you want to launch your controller at the TV. Like I cannot even play Madden anymore because, once you have a real job and responsibilities and stuff and you can't play the game like 4 hours a day, you just don't know all of the loopholes in the game and which plays are basically indefensible. And I don't even bother playing that game online anymore.
The quick slant audible. If you ever run into me, I run the full audible offense. So the quick slant audible, as soon as you see off coverage from the cornerbacks in Madden and you switch to quick slants over the middle and you have quality receivers, can't stop that.
The chat is going crazy with people basically saying, I'll dust you in Madden, I'll kill you in Madden, nobody can take me in Madden. And I'm just like, I can't even argue with any of you guys. You probably would.
Neither can I. So. I'm not good. I'm not like especially good at Madden. I just love building rosters. Like honestly, guys, like for some of you guys that like want to get more like knowledgeable about football, just read like the salary cap stuff on Madden. It's tremendous. They give you a ton of information there where like the game planning and stuff that they show you a bunch of different concepts like flood concepts, stick concepts, all that kind of stuff. That's, those are big pieces of a lot of like very important offenses in the NFL still.
Yeah.
Like it's a very realistic game for the most part.
Yeah, I'll let all you guys have Madden in the chat, but you can't hang with me on FIFA. I'll just say that, so don't even try. All right, so let's. I want to ask you guys about right tackle. Remmers missed, what is it, like his fifth straight game, fourth or fifth straight? Fourth
I
game.
believe.
So at this point, I mean, even if he's healthy, do you think Hill's done enough to lock down that spot? I mean, I feel like Zimmer was maybe even thinking about giving Hill the start anyway. Maybe he wasn't. I don't know. But I mean, at this point, do you see them going back to Remmers this week if he's healthy and ready to go, or do you think Hill should be the guy now?
I mean, I'm not switching from Mike Remmers personally,
No?
but
This is literally the offensive line version of the Teddy Bridgewater Case.
yeah, this is the Teddy Case debate.
Do people
right
talk
here.
about this a
Except
lot?
on right tackle.
So I'm going to give you the exact same explanation that I gave you when I wasn't sold on Case Keenum. I think that Rashad Hill is playing tremendously well.
Are you going to use the Super Bowl argument that can we win a Super Bowl with Rashad Hill?
I will if we need to do that. Yeah.
Right.
But straight up, I mean, Rashad Hill has been nothing but solid, basically since week 17 of last year. I remember last year calling for an encore performance this year and not necessarily believing in Mike Remmers. And I think that was kind of a fair take by me at the time. He's proven me wrong for sure. But my point being here is that you can't make the switch, I don't think. But if you see it's a back issue for Mike Remmers right now, and that's a horrible problem to have as an offensive lineman. If you see him struggling out there and you can kind of see pain on his face, I think it might be time to at least consider Rashad Hill as the starting guy moving forward.
Yeah, definitely. What about all right, so let's talk about the running backs really quick. So the Vikings had 105 yards on the ground. Let me pull up the box score really quick. So Murray had 76 yards. A lot of that came on that long 30-yard run, which set up Jerick McKinnon for his only touchdown of the game, and he got to do his dirty bird at home in his home team stadium, which was kind of cool. McKinnon had
awesome.
24 yards on the ground outside of that, and both of them had about 25 yards in the air. So anything to point out with the performance of these two? I feel like they just kind of go back and forth on who the stronger one is, and I feel like Murray's probably had that role the past couple weeks. But it's nice to know that if one of them doesn't, I don't want to say doesn't show up because they've both been showing up, but it seems like every game you can expect one of them to kind of take over and be that guy. So I don't know, anything to point out with those two? Anything you guys like today? Or go ahead, Sean.
Murray looks like he's getting healthy. I know it's been out for a week or two now, but it shows on the field. He's got a little more explosiveness. He looked really cocky today, which I actually love. So I like seeing that from him. I think him healthy down the stretch has been huge. And filling in for Dalvin Cook.
Yeah, I kind of can't believe that's where we are with these two. I don't know, man. This season is just so amazing right now. I guess with everything that happened those first few weeks, if you tell me we were 10-2, I don't know that I would believe you. But here we are, and we're rushing the ball better than when we had Dalvin Cook, and Dalvin Cook was leading the NFL in rushing before he got injured, and we're 10-2 with Case Keenum. I mean, that's I don't know why I'm laughing saying that out loud, but it's just crazy.
No, that is
crazy.
funny.
It's
That's worth laughing over for sure.
Have you guys made note of this stat yet? The Vikings are 10-0 when scoring 10 points or more this year.
10 points.
Yeah, they're 10-0 when scoring 10 points.
So basically, if the offense gets on the field, we're probably gonna win the game by that.
That was the Vikings. If I got this right, I believe I have this right. Vikings are now 30-3. Oh no, they didn't score 21 points today. Never mind.
No, they didn't score 20. Yeah, they didn't need to.
They
They didn't need to score 10. They didn't need to score 10.
What was the stat going to be though?
If the Vikings had if they had scored 21 points again today, they would have now notched their 30th victory in 33 chances when Mike Zimmer defenses are allowed 21 points or more on offense. That would have been the 30th one since he's been around, since 2014.
I haven't been monitoring the chat too much, but this is kind of an interesting question that just caught my eye. Lucas asked, do you think the Vikings would be better with Bradford and Cook? Is that a crazy question to ask? Because I kind of feel
No.
like it's not
No,
crazy.
that's not a crazy question to ask, is what I'm saying.
They would be better.
I mean,
You think they would be better?
Oh yeah.
you'd think, right? Dalvin Cook didn't just get bad, like there's a correlation causation thing here that people need to really like understand. Like the Vikings are running the ball very, very, very well. Murray's doing a great job. McKinnon's doing a great job, but like Dalvin Cook, man, I mean, come on.
Yeah, I'll give you the Dalvin Cook aspect because even if you still had, Dalvin Cook was still healthy, you still have Murray and McKinnon heating up behind him.
Right.
But the Sam Bradford thing I think is interesting because I don't have the stats in front of me, but I think it's probably safe to say that Keenum's having a better year right now than Bradford had last year. Would you agree with that?
He's definitely getting it done from a situational standpoint a lot better.
Probably even from a statistical standpoint, right? I mean, if you looked at touchdowns and interceptions.
Yeah, I mean,
I'd have to look it up, but
let's keep in mind that Bradford was really, really good last year. I mean, people love to kill him for accuracy and the dink and dunk thing or whatever it is. But he was tremendous last year. I think Keenum's definitely playing better situational football. The question, kind of to answer the question that's being posed here is, I mean, would Bradford be better situationally than Keenum? And I don't know if that's true because last year, the 3 attempts at fourth quarter comebacks did not work out for Sam Bradford, whereas Case Keenum is probably playing his best football in 2-minute clutch situations, second half situations, that type of thing. So maybe from a situational standpoint, I think Case Keenum has absolutely been better. But from a volume stat standpoint, the numbers that everyone loves to look at because of fantasy football, then no.
I think so. The Big Herman just brought this up in the chat. This is cool. It's some good conversation. He said it's hard to say because how many more sacks they'd give up if Bradford was in. Basically, I guess suggesting that Keenum has much better pocket presence than Bradford, and I would agree with that 100%.
That's definitive. That's absolutely definitive.
So I don't know. It's a pretty interesting question. Thanks for that, Lucas. You got us thinking. So let's talk about Drew. Why don't you give us an update on the playoff picture? Like I know when we started going.
Playoffs.
Yeah, I know when we started the show, Green Bay was still wrapping up their game, so I guess they won. And you were telling us Green Bay's still in this. Watch out, Green.
They're gonna make
because you're a closet Green Bay fan.
They're gonna win. They're gonna make the playoffs.
You're a closet Packers fan.
Just saying.
So go ahead and give us an update. I know we got Philly's still sitting at 10-2. They haven't played yet. They play the Seahawks today. We're sitting at 10-2. Where's everyone else sitting at? Like now, I guess. If you have an instant update.
Right now, like after today.
Well, I mean, there's games.
Early games.
Yeah, there's games still going on right now, but I don't know.
Well, Detroit lost to Baltimore. Green Bay them and Green Bay are tied at 6-6 right now. And then obviously the Falcons dropped to 7-5. You had, let's see what other game was important for Tennessee. What was it? I knew there was another one.
This one, the one that's going on right now.
Is it the
Panthers Saints going on right now?
Okay, yeah. Oh, right. Okay, that's what it was. So either the Saints or the Panthers will lose, and this is kind of why I'm thinking that the Packers have a decent chance here because I think a lot of things have worked out for them today, and they have the Browns next week, and they have Aaron Rodgers coming back for the Panthers game, which they can gain essentially a 2-game swing on that one. If they win that game, then they have Vikings Lions to wrap up the season. So I do think they'll have to win out, but it's very distinct possibility that they do. But I mean, I think, and then you have the Seahawks and Eagles game tonight, which is going to be huge also for playoff implications.
Seahawks.
It'd be nice to see the Seahawks get a win there, knock Philly down.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, do you think it's looking good for us? Because I guess what do we have to do to lock in the number 2 seed at this point? Because obviously the number 1 seed is ideal, right? But if we can get the number 2 seed, there's still a possibility we could have every playoff game at home and then the Super Bowl, right? Because if Philly were to go on and lose in the divisional round, we would end up hosting the NFC Championship. So, I mean, how close are we, you think, to being able to clinch at least a number 2 spot?
Well, I think
we have a 2-game lead right now, right? Well, actually, this week's not over, so I guess
a win next week would go a long way against Carolina, especially if Carolina beats the Saints. That would win next week against Carolina would go a long way because then essentially they would have to win 2 of their final 3. The Vikings would, I believe, and that would be beating the Bears and the Bengals at home, which I I mean, right now, I can confidently say I like the chances of that happening. So, I think next week we'll really debate, especially if Carolina wins over the Saints today. And I believe we got an update in the chat that the game is tied 7-7 right now. So, yeah, I mean, I like the Vikings' chances right now to have a first-round bye, which that's pretty cool to say. And I did not expect to say that 8 weeks ago.
Yeah, the Vikings actually. I had the Vikings at 10-6 for the season. I don't know. I can't remember what your guys' predictions were, but we got 4 games left, and they've already hit my win total prediction for the season. So there's that.
They've already topped mine, so that's good.
Is there a team outside of the Eagles right now that concerns you guys in the NFC? I mean, because we've beaten all of them, right, except for Carolina at this point.
No. I mean, I don't want to play anyone on the road. I don't want to play any of these powerhouse NFC teams on the road. I still think it's a scary situation to play. If you play a team twice, generally speaking, if you play a team 2 times, you're generally going to get a split, right? So for that, from a probability aspect, it concerns every team that makes the playoffs is going to concern me, I guess, especially if you're playing on the road. But from an overall, like, which team is better across the board as far as a roster is concerned, no. I think Philadelphia is really the only one that has the most talent from the 22 people on the field perspective.
And the Eagles have a big test the next 2 weeks here. Seattle at the 12th man, and then at Rams. I think people have criticized them for having the easiest schedule in the NFL, so they can kind of, prove themselves to everybody else that they're for real if they can go out and get these 2 wins here. I don't expect them to get both. I would expect a split there. Win 1, lose 1 probably, but you never know. I think we're going to find out how good the Eagles are in the next 2 weeks if they can get those 2 wins, because they've mostly beaten up on not terrible teams, but I mean they've been clearly superior roster most of the time. Whereas with the Vikings beating the Rams and the Falcons, in 2 of the last 3 games, kind of signifies that they are for real. And the Eagles really don't have that signature win yet.
So if you had to guess today, let's just say NFC Championship, we're playing the Eagles. How scared are you of that team? Because I feel like Drew, you're probably more scared than others, or more scared than I am. So, I mean, is there a lot of worry facing that team, or do you think the Vikings could handle them pretty well? How do you think they match up?
I really like the Vikings' chances if it's a home game. Now, if the Vikings have to go to Philly for an NFC Championship game, I feel a lot less confident about that, because Philly is as hard of a place to play probably as US Bank Stadium, or at least it's close. So I really like the Vikings' chances at home. Regardless of who the opponent is, even if it's the Philadelphia Eagles, I still like the Vikings at home. But on the road, not quite believing in them to go to Philly and win yet.
Okay. All right, so let's look really quick before we maybe bring some. Go ahead, Sean.
There's one team that I'm afraid of. I'm not afraid of the Eagles because they're choke artists. So I'm just not afraid of them. But Drew brought this team up earlier. The team to our direct east, the Green Bay Packers, scare me a little bit. And I don't think they should be overlooked.
See, there, you're coming around, Sean. See, you can jump on. If the Packers get hot and they make the playoffs, the Packers get hot and make the playoffs with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, dude, that's scary. That's scary.
Okay,
I'm telling you.
Scare me more than Philly.
Time out for a second. Okay, so I agree with what both of you guys are saying right now, but I do want to point out that I think this is more a mental block for Vikings fans as opposed to objective analysis. Because if the Green Bay Packers, for example, were the New Orleans Saints, I think we would look at them and be like, this team is absolute trash. Because that's how we looked at Drew Brees the last couple of years when he was playing with an awful defense. And we said this team was bad. As soon as their elite quarterback's not playing well, they're a bad team. So that's kind of how I feel about Green Bay. But the stigma of playing at Lambeau Field, that will always make me nervous. I'm never going to put Green Bay out of being, competitive with the Vikings when they're playing at Lambeau, because it's a divisional matchup. Nobody wants to, both teams want to win that football game, no matter if they're both 0-15. Doesn't matter. So I think the Packers are scary for that reason, but I also think that they're a horrible football team. And if we didn't have such a horrible history of success with the Packers, I don't think we'd be saying this about them right now.
I don't think it's just you're almost suggesting that it's just mental for Vikings fans and that's why they're scared of it. I do think that they just match up better against us, and that there's so much history between the two teams because it's a divisional game that you just really never know what's going to happen, especially if Aaron Rodgers is in the mix. So
you hit it. It's all Aaron Rodgers for me.
But I think
That's pretty good.
I don't want to say impossible because I think it's probably still statistically possible, but I don't think it's likely that Green Bay is going to win the division at this point. So there's pretty much zero chance we're playing in Lambeau in the postseason, which is good to know.
Right.
That if we do end up playing Green Bay, it would probably be in Minnesota, knock on wood.
Yeah.
But I still don't think they're going to make it. So
if you play a team 3 times in 1 year, you just heard what I said about 2 times in 1 year. Think about 3 times. I don't know. It's concerning, but it's more concerning just because.
Well, we remember the Packers last year, right? They were 4-6.
Yeah.
Got hot, made the playoffs, did they make the NFC Championship game? I'm pretty sure they did.
Yeah, they actually got blown. They got blown the hell out in the NFC
by the
Championship.
team we just
Right.
Absolutely torched, destroyed.
That was so much fun.
They beat Dallas though.
The Vikings were
Dallas
8-8 last year, BJ. The Vikings were 8-8 last year.
What's their record right now?
I'm just saying.
Well, no, that's a legitimate. I mean, so what is the Packers?
We're talking
record right
about
now? It's
playoffs.
6-5.
I know. I'm just having fun. I feel you.
Are the Packers 6-6 now?
Yeah.
Okay. So we would have to lose like 4 to 5 games, and they would have to win 4 to 5 games in order to win the division, basically.
No, the Vikings are 1 win away from the division. Doesn't matter who they beat. If they win one more time this season, they have the division. So the Packers will be at best a wild card team unless they win out and the Vikings lose out.
That's beautiful. What about the Seahawks?
Always concerned about the Seahawks until the dynasty ends. I'm not counting them out. Sorry. I feel the same way with Denver, just because of how good that defense is. Like if for example with Denver, if one of their quarterbacks, like let's say, I mean they're all pretty bad. Let's be real, but if one of them finds a hot streak similar to whatever the hell is going on with Case Keenum, that team just immediately becomes good again. So I'm similar with Seattle because if their offensive line suddenly figures it out and they can start running the football again, it's still concerning because playing out as CenturyLink Field out there. Place is brutal. So I think you'd be concerned about the Seahawks until they prove that we shouldn't be concerned about the Seahawks.
What's their record though right now though?
7-5.
Again, so it's very unlikely
Seattle?
at this point that we would be playing in Seattle, any games in Seattle.
Right.
So
Seattle's 7-4, I believe, because they still got to play tonight against Philly.
Their secondary is
7-4. That's what I said.
yeah.
Helps.
What'd you say, Sean?
And so their secondary is pretty banged up, which helps.
I know, and I would love to see our defense against that offensive line. But Russell Wilson, he's so freaking good, man. I know we would get to him, but I just think he'd be able to get away. I just hate playing Russell Wilson. I think he's really great. All right, so I posted a link in the chat to maybe bring a couple people on really quick if you guys want to jump on, ask a question, share a player of the game. So don't be shy. Just have a camera and a mic or something. Make sure you close YouTube before you come in. We'd love to get you on the show and get who you're giving your game ball to, and maybe get any additional questions before we wrap this thing up. So with that being said, before we do player of the game, while we're seeing if anyone wants to join us, what do you guys think about the Panthers game next weekend? What are your initial thoughts right now headed into that game, BJ?
Well, I'm simultaneously watching the Panthers right now. So I can figure out the answer to that question. The way I feel about it at this point is that I think that they have a lot of players that pose issues in coverage, particularly Christian McCaffrey, who can line up all over the field, and Cam Newton, extremely versatile player. Vikings in history, I mean, you guys don't need me to say this, but the Vikings in history have not handled mobile quarterbacks all that well, a la that Michael Vick run way back when. Or Robert Griffin's run in overtime, or whatever it was. So I'm concerned to a degree, but at the same time, I am so jacked to see Matt get tossed. I mean, as a good team, I think they're a quality team, but I think the Vikings should be able to go in there, do some damage. I think it might come down to a momentum swing at some point during, I guess, at some point. In Carolina.
I'm not worried about Carolina at all.
Hey,
to be
I'm sorry,
honest.
guys. Can you hear
I
me
think
right
the
now?
Vikings will go in there and